Hello, everyone, and welcome to the SopranoCast. I'm Nate Maxson, along with my associate, Mr. Archie Mitchell.
That's right. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We're back again.
The sausage and peppers are out. Nice spread here. Hey,
Ma, where's the Sunday gravy?
Yeah, one of us is in Ohio, one of us is in Jersey. So the reality is I'm probably just eating pretzels. But anyway, it sounds cooler if we've got the authentic Italian cuisine going on. But
Right.
For those of you that listened to
Right.
the first show, we appreciate you going on this journey with us through the television show, The Sopranos. Of course, last week we covered the pilot, and we covered a lot of our history with the show and fandom, which of course we'll cover as we go through each episode of the show as well. But I think last week, we spent a little time with some exposition, so that took a little longer. We're hoping to give you good content, good commentary, and of course, like I said last week, if you have any comments, if you have anything that you want to discuss with us, you can comment underneath the show on Facebook, any comments you have about certain episodes of the show, or you can email SopranoPodcast@gmail.com because we want to hear from you. Let's be fans. Let's interact.
But when you email, please make sure you mention no names and no places because you never know who might be watching.
Yeah. Email me from another computer.
Right. Make it very vague.
I was thinking about that when watching this episode, which the episode we're talking about this week is 46 long, which originally aired on January the 17th, 1999. And I was thinking it was either this episode or the next episode, but the payphone.
Yes.
What a lost thing that is. My wife and
Burner
I were
cell
watching.
Phones.
Yes. But we were watching. Remember the Stephen King movie Christine?
Mm-hmm.
We were watching Christine the other night, and there's a scene that takes place at a gas station. And at the gas station, there's like a whole line of payphones. Phone. And I was just like, man, I remember when those things were on every corner. And now, I mean, at least where I'm at, I don't know how it is in Jersey, but where I'm at in Ohio.
We don't have them.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can't find a payphone around here.
You'll find the setup for it, like the base, because they didn't want to take that away, but you will not find the receiver or the phone itself. And if you do, the receiver's gone or it's broken. New York has, I think, 4 that are still set up in working order, or they try to keep them in working order. But New Jersey is no such thing as a payphone anymore.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of crazy. And it also makes me feel pretty old.
Right.
But
remember calling cards and things of that nature?
Oh, yeah.
10-10-220. Yep. Or, of course, the famous collect call commercial, Bob had a baby, it's a boy.
Yeah, Bob had a baby, it's a boy. 1-800-COLLECT.
Yep.
Even the track phones where you paid for minutes on your phone. I think those still exist in some areas, but
they do, and mostly the elderly use them. Like a lot of the elderly will get them from like welfare or SSI, and then they purchase their minutes. Because I know because my grandma has one, and it's paid for monthly by the state. But in this show, that's what they were using. It was a track phone or a Virgin Mobile or whatever it was, to buy a prepaid phone card with a cell phone. Use it once or twice and then discard it because there's no tracing those things.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's no monthly bill. There's no monthly statement. You can't call up and go, hey, what was said on that last phone call? Because it was done through a calling card. So, yeah, it was a different world back then.
Well, overall, I really enjoyed this episode of the TV show.
I did as well.
This episode's. I mean, I know the pilot we talked a lot about introducing the characters and the relationships and everything, but what this episode did was, now that we know the characters, or most of them, and their relationships and what our first storylines are going to be, this time we got to get into more. There's great humor in this episode.
Oh yes.
And we'll just start from the beginning when the boys are watching TV in the in the back room, and they're watching the government witness guy. I think, ironically, wasn't his name Vinny Russo?
Yep.
Yeah. For those of you that listen to our wrestling shows, you know the connection there. Yeah, Vince Russo's a stooge. But anyway, I thought it was, God, I laughed out loud when Paulie told his joke.
Yeah.
And then turns to Silvio, who's sitting right beside him. You hear what I told him?
Repeats it. Yep. And
yes.
Repeats it again. And see, that was something that only lasted about 4 episodes. Paulie doing that repeating thing, which I think they were trying to pay homage to Goodfellas, Jimmy Two Times. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, but also it was Paulie's ego. Hey, I want everybody laughing at my joke. You know what I mean? So, because he does it in this episode like 2 or 3 times, and then he does it throughout the next few. But then that part of the character dies. You never hear him do that again.
And this episode is where we first see, because it wasn't in the pilot, but we first see Woke Up This Morning as the actual intro to the TV show, because they did play it during the pilot. I remember. I think when Tony was driving. I believe.
Turnpike.
Yes.
But on the New Jersey Turnpike.
This episode, we actually get the actual intro video.
Yep.
Which since I've watched this show so many times, it's one of those songs where at least the parts of the song that are the intro for Sopranos, I know it from beginning to end by heart.
Oh yeah, and look, I explained it in the first episode. I still want to be Tony Soprano. There have been many times I've been on the Parkway or the Turnpike in New Jersey, driving to an appointment or a golf outing or whatever, and I blasted this song. You know what I mean? Because it puts you in a mood you feel like you're going somewhere important.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
So, yeah, the intro is a major part of the show.
You're an important man.
Yes. So, yeah, and then this episode, we get a little more fleshing out of the Christopher character.
Yes.
In that, who he is to Tony, what he means to Tony. Because in the first episode, he was there, but you really didn't get, he was you thought he was the young punk running kid that Tony had around. Now
and it's like
their family,
It's like you said in the pilot, it felt like they had more of a brother relationship than a father-son relationship.
Right, exactly.
Whereas now we're going to see that it's different. It's a different relationship than you originally would have thought.
Right.
There's some humor in that initial truck jacking scene too.
Yes.
I love the guy that what's the guy? How's he put it? Christopher's like, do you feel properly scathed? Because the guy says he doesn't want to look unscathed.
Don't leave me looking too clean is the exact word. If I look like I went along with it, then I'll lose my job. So they beat him with a gun. They kick him in the stomach. They punch him in the face, and then they're just, do you feel scathed now? Should we tie you up? What do you want us to do with you? No, that is an important scene. And then, of course, the next morning you find out, it was Junior's truck. Right.
Yes.
And they weren't supposed to be messing with it.
Yeah, of course, leads to tension. And I have kind of a central theme here written down as we're building through this episode. Just building the tension between Tony and Junior is very important going forward.
Yes.
Because they have this amazing love-hate relationship, that runs through most of the series.
Exactly. But, and again, to pay a little bit of credit to the Many Saints of Newark, the Sopranos movie, that was something that actually, because they show you early on, Junior and Tony, as Tony comes up being a young man, Junior didn't like anybody around him, though. So any love he was showing to Tony or respect that he was showing to Tony might have been kind of plastic because he was always worried someone was trying to take his spot.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So Junior was very worried about respect and being held in high regard. Meanwhile, as the movie showed us, and as we'll learn the rest of the seasons, Junior's kind of a mess up. Yeah. He doesn't really know how to go through with certain things unless somebody advises him.
There's a reason.
Tony,
There's a reason Junior's never been the man.
right, exactly. Whereas Tony knows how to get shit done. Yeah, he needs a little bit of advice here and there as not to go overboard, but Tony Soprano knows how to get certain things done without even asking, is it okay first?
Mm-hmm.
So there is a difference there, and I think that's where the somewhat of respect and love comes in, but then the tension really comes in because Junior feels like he's at the bottom looking up at Tony at all times.
Yes.
So,
the other ongoing storyline throughout this show, which leads to some very humorous stuff, is that Anthony Jr.'s teacher's car was stolen.
yes.
So essentially, Paulie and Big Pussy go on a mission to try to find the teacher's car for Tony. And that leads to some great shit throughout this episode.
And it does. It really does. But when you think about the big picture of it all, Carmela saying, maybe you could help, made no sense whatsoever. Because why would you want your husband, who's attempting not to look like a mobster, to use his mob ties in order to help your son's teacher? You know what I mean? It's like you're always telling him, we have to look normal. We have to look like we're refined people. We're good people. We can't have a gun. We can't have that. But then as soon as something goes wrong, oh, well, he's getting a bad grade. Help him find his teacher's car so he can get help better. It's like, really? You hypocrite.
Yeah, she's very hypocritical. She's hypocritical on many levels because not only something like that, but she doesn't like to act like she is proud of what Tony does for a living, but she definitely doesn't mind spending the money.
Oh no,
and she definitely doesn't mind the lifestyle it affords her.
Oh yeah, she pushes her weight around. I don't know. I liken it a lot too, and this is not to talk badly about anybody, but certain people who are like in the army, and their wives say, "Well, I'm an army wife. I deserve this. I deserve." There are certain women that have husbands that are like sergeants in the Navy and in the Army that try to use that to get a better lifestyle. Well, my husband's away and he's fighting for this country. In the same regard, Carmela does that too. My husband's this big bossy guy. I could throw his weight around if I need to. And it's like, really? You can? I don't see that really adding up to much. You know what I mean? So she does it a lot in this episode and then goes on to do it further throughout the seasons. And it's like, please stop. Ask him to do it. Why are you trying to do it?
There are almost times where, and I didn't even, there's going to be things that I think about as we do this show because again, like I said on the pilot episode, now we're watching the show to analyze it instead of just watching it to be entertained.
Right.
But there's a lot of things you just brought up there, and maybe we'll bring it up again as the show goes on. But Tony married his mother.
Yes. Yes. Exactly, because as we find out later on in time, Olivia, Tony's mother, used to get free meat from the meat guy, used to get free food, used to use it to get her hair and nails done. And it was like, why are you using these for their power as a mobster for such minuscule things?
Yes.
I'm sure that they didn't become mobsters and give their life to organized crime so their wife can get her hair and nails done for free. It just doesn't make sense.
Another funny thing that runs through this episode, because here in a little bit we'll get back to the guys looking for the car. Georgie and the new phone system. Another great running gag throughout this episode.
Oh my, yes.
Especially, and we'll get to it at the end. It caps everything off at the end of the episode, but I love the scene where he first can't figure it out because Tony's expecting the call from the guy.
That's all we know him as.
Yeah, he's expecting the call from the guy. It doesn't even matter what it's about. It's obviously important to Tony. And Georgie keeps hanging up on him, or he doesn't put him on hold right. And then there's a call. He has to call his mother, and it just this whole scene, this whole episode, you get to watch Tony just go from cold to boil so many times. And but Georgie and the phone system, And then, like I said, Tony gets on the phone with his mother. She's got the mushrooms on the stove. She gets distracted by the mail lady. Which I'm telling you, man, this woman is my grandmother. Like, what's she doing now? What's she doing?
Her nose is involved in the wrong business. Then the mushrooms catch on fire. And the thing that makes me laugh the hardest is, which reminds me of my great-grandmother the most, she comes back to the phone as the house is about to burn down and goes, "Who is this?" Like, the Alzheimer's is real. This woman knows nothing of what's going on except for there's a fire. And he's like, "Ma, it's me. What's wrong?" She explains, "Oh, the mushrooms caught on fire. The wall is turning black." And he tries to explain to her so badly. Hang up and call 911. And she's still being stubborn. "Why aren't you coming?" And it's like, "Mom, I'm 45 minutes away."
And the other great thing is when she does finally dial 911, she dials it slower than the sound of smell.
Right.
Or slower than the speed of smell. Like she's like, beep, beep.
Right. Beep. That house should have been gone by then. You know what I mean? There was no way that a grease fire, which she tried to put water on, which is never good, should have been that contained in the probably 8 minutes it took the fire department to get there because of how long he took to make that phone call.
Right. It's but of course this leads to Livia having to have a caretaker because
but you're glossing over a major part though. Tony hangs up the phone, which by now the guy is on hold that he was waiting to talk to.
Oh, yeah.
Calls Carmela and says, "My mother's house is on fire. Can you please go over there and check on her and make sure she's okay?" And Carmela, after just asking this man an hour ago to find his son's teacher's car, goes, "Oh, I guess so," and hangs up the phone.
As she's painting her nails. Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then he gets the guy on the phone, gets his phone number, and hangs up. So that's all he was waiting to do on that phone call. So, yeah, and then of course, yes, this leads to Olivia moving to the old folks' home or retirement community, as they call it many times.
Because she goes through, of course, the. They had the caretaker first. Which is kind of funny because she's like a Jamaican lady, I guess you'd say. And Tony's like, "No smoking the reefer when you're here." And I just, it's like he just presumes that she's smoking weed.
And Olivia, being an old prodigy, old woman, is being as racist as possible.
Yes, she's stealing. She stole a plate. And then Tony has to remind her, "You've been giving shit away because you think you're going to die. You sure you didn't give it to a relative or whatever?"
Then she offers him some jewelry. He says no. Oh, no, she offers him the Barker lounger.
Yes.
He says no, and then to throw it in his face, she tells him, "By the way, you know my good jewelry that your dad bought me?" He's like, "Yeah, Carmela loves it." "Well, I gave that to the cousins," and he goes off again.
Yes, and it's another one of those scenes where, like we talked about during the pilot episode, this woman is, yes, she's old. Yes, she's forgetful, but she's also not as forgetful as she lets on.
Oh, no.
She's not as addled as she lets on. She's quite a sinister woman, actually.
Oh, yeah. She told him that to get his goat.
Yes.
Hoping that he'd say, "I don't care anymore," and walk out. But him being him, he stayed with her, finished talking to her, and said, "Well, I'm going to have to get you into a retirement community no matter whether you like it or not."
Mm-hmm.
Because she's still trying to, my daughters, and he has to remind her, your daughters want nothing to do with you. Because at this time, he doesn't know where Janice is. And his other sister moved into the lap of luxury in a different part of New Jersey, forgetting that her dad was a mobster and her brother's a mobster. And, she went and moved in with she married as I told my wife when I rewatched the episode, Nate, she married the whitest Italian she could find. Because she knew she didn't want to be a part of organized crime.
Mm-hmm.
So she knew she couldn't just go to anybody. She had to marry somebody who wanted nothing to do with the Italian heritage.
Right.
So,
and of course we have the other storyline going on as we go through this back to the DVD players, with Junior and Jackie and Tony meeting about this whole thing. Jackie having to, of course, mediate because he's the boss.
Right.
And Jackie says, essentially, Chris has to pay restitution.
Right.
He has to pay restitution to Junior.
And this is the first time we're seeing the Jackie Aprile character because he was
Yes.
nowhere to be found in episode 1. And they picked a great character. They picked a great actor to play him, a very strong Italian actor. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So,
I think in the first, if and you can tell me if you think I'm wrong, but I think between the pilot and this episode, because your pilot episode, like we said, you're testing things out, you're floating balloons. I think in the pilot, the gist I think was that maybe the reason we didn't see Jackie. And not that he's not powerful, but I think the gist of the pilot was Tony. We were supposed to assume Tony's more powerful than he actually is at this point.
Right.
He almost came off like he was the man in charge in the pilot.
Well, again, going back to analyze this, Robert De Niro was the boss in that show, in that movie. Mm-hmm. So I think when they wrote the script for this, they kind of went almost with that a little bit for the pilot. And it was like, okay, we're following the mob boss. And he's going to a therapist, only we're going to go super serious with it, not comedic like De Niro and Crystal did it. But then when they saw how the pilot tested, they went, okay, we can't just make him the boss immediately because nobody would want to be the mob boss immediately. You even hear him say it a few times in this episode. Who would want to be the mob, be the boss of the mob right now? FBI's always looking over your shoulder. Mm-hmm. Cops are always following you. So I think they wanted to tweak it a little bit and then make it, well, Jackie's the acting boss because the real boss is in prison. And Junior and Tony are kind of battling for who's going to take over because Jackie has leukemia and it's slowly dying.
Right.
So we knew we were going to get to the Soprano men fighting over the crown eventually.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So
as we weave in and out of Paulie and Puss trying to find the car,
they were great together.
Oh God, yes, and the little storyline with Paulie being obsessed with the fact that everybody has lifted Italian culture, and because they're going to essentially those of you, if you're listening to the show, you've seen the show, the TV show, but I'm going to say it anyway. They're going to these coffee shops because the supposed thief supposedly works at one of these coffee shops. So as they're going to the coffee shops, he's noticing, we came up with espresso. We came up with this, and then he gets into, they take everything from us, pizza, blah, blah, blah. So then he starts stealing. Yes, he has gotten himself all worked up about the fact that the Italian culture has been taken by everybody but the Italians.
And he's not really wrong when you think about it. You know what I mean? Because some of the things he mentioned, the Asians are taking credit for spaghetti when we were the ones who made it first. The coffee, the pizza, this, and he's getting himself into a tizzy. Meanwhile, Puss is just like, calm the fuck down. We're trying to find this car right now. I need you at full capacity. And then he takes. I couldn't tell if it was like a grinder or what, but he puts a coffee machine in his jacket pocket.
Yes,
you can tell it's there.
He takes
tell it's there.
Yeah, he takes a couple of things, I think, if I remember right, because I wrote down he takes a he takes
drip coffee machines or something.
Yes, he takes a coffee pot from Starbucks, I think it is.
Yeah, and he puts it in his jacket. You could tell it's there, so anyone who would have looked at it would have went, "Sir, are you stealing?" And Pussy's like, we got it, we know where the guy is, let's go. And they just walk out.
And they do wind up finding the gentleman, and and of course this is some stuff that you probably couldn't. There are some the gentlemen that stole the car are homosexual.
Yes,
and they're
one of them being played by Mike Epps from the Friday series.
And yes.
How long ago were these episodes filmed that Mike Epps was not a major star yet? Because Friday came out 4 years before this.
Yeah.
They break in. They bust the guy in the lip, and then out walks Mike Epps, and he goes in the most feminine voice possible, "Oh, Eddie," and it's like, oh God. At that point, you realize, okay, they're gay. All right, no big deal about that. But it's like, wow, what a total turn.
And of course, they make some jokes in this episode that you probably wouldn't be able to
Mhm.
make today in 2023. But
Right.
the I lost my place. So you have that going on, and I don't know why. I don't know why it happens to me every single time that I watch this series. But every single time I watch this series, every single time I watch this episode, for some reason, I forget that Livia accidentally runs that old bitch down. And every single time, it makes me laugh. Because she's bitching about, having to back out of that driveway.
Right. And she's literally telling the woman, be careful, you never know who might be in the home.
Yeah.
But then runs her down. Runs her down.
Oh,
and then,
man.
okay, we're back in Dr. Milfie's office. It's like, my mom ran over her friend. Oh, any damage? Oh, her friend had a broken hip and a busted rib and a concussion. He doesn't care about that. He's like, my mom sprained her ankle and sprained her wrist. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. He didn't care about the other woman. It was just about his mom.
Just about his mother.
She did, And then Milfie's like, maybe she did it subconsciously. You think my mom wanted to whack her best friend? Like, never know. And that that's the catalyst that puts her into the old folks home, because she can't do anything for herself anymore.
Yes.
So.
And I wrote down here, I must have been really like, because this is actually, after this is the scene where, like we talked about earlier with the jewelry thing.
Mm-hmm.
But Tony does tell her, I wrote down Olivia line, because Tony tells her, there's a great room available at the home. And she says to him, she says to him, of course it's available. Somebody died.
Yep.
I had to write that down because I thought that was a great line.
It reminded me of every time I ever heard my dad, like before my grandfather passed away, or my grandma, or my great-grandmother before she passed away. It reminded me of every time we've ever mentioned something like that in front of them always saying something like that. You know what I mean? Because it makes sense. There's a room available. Why would there be a room available? Somebody died. And that was the great thing about the Olivia character. As heartless as she came off in a lot of episodes, and as crazy as she came off in a lot of episodes, she was hysterical.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
She was the best part of the first season.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, the I cannot remember her name off the top of my head, but the actress that played her is fantastic, and she was perfectly cast.
Oh, yeah.
I think her name's Nancy something. I cannot remember her last name. But anyway, she was perfectly cast. She did a great job. And yeah, I mean, just it, and again, as we go through the show, yeah, I've mentioned she's evil, she's sinister, but she is definitely one of my favorite characters on this TV show.
Nancy Marchand is her name.
Marchand. Yeah, I thought it was Nancy something, but I couldn't remember.
Yeah. Hard last name to remember.
The other thing here, of course, we're gonna get to the ending with, obviously the car gets returned. Well, not really returned to the teacher, which is hilarious.
They dropped the car to a chop shop. It got chopped before they got there. So Pussy's idea is, you're going to take those plates and you're going to find me another Saturn, and then they paint it red, or the same color burgundy that it was, and drop it off to the teacher, who is very much so happy, but very reserved, because, oh, it's a different key. Oh, the paint is still wet. It's a different color when I opened it. And there's little Anthony Soprano going, my dad's a hero. You know?
Yes.
He's so proud, but he doesn't realize what actually happened because he's a kid.
Yes. And it's great. Like I said, there's so much great. This show does such a good job of mixing what you love in a mob, and again, we're gonna get to all of it, because obviously we're big fans, or we wouldn't be doing a podcast. Yes. But what you love about mob things, what you love about drama, but also what you love about comedy. There's so much
Right.
great comedy in this show.
Right. The one thing I will say, as I told you in the pilot episode, I love the Christopher character. The Brendan character,
Yes,
I could not stand from day one.
that is actually literally my next note.
Mm-hmm.
Is Brendan is an idiot. Brendan is an asshole, and I'm glad he's about to die.
Right, right. When they killed off the Brendan character by episode 4, I was like, thank you. He needed to go. You realize that you get enthralled with the mob stuff, the movies, the TV shows, when you start being happy that somebody died off the series or the movie.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
he deserved that. Yes, he deserved that. Because not only is Brandon not apologetic about stealing the truck, not only is he trying to talk to Tony Soprano being the biggest shit that is involved in the mob, because he's like bottom of the barrel gangster. He's not even a gangster, he's a soldier. But he makes a really bad joke about Jackie Aprile and says, we all know you've been the boss since Jackie became the Kimosabi. And it's like, really? You degenerate punk kid.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. Just the disgusting lack of respect.
Yeah. And when Tony throws him through the door, perfect. It's what needed to happen. And then, of course, hey, there's another truck coming in with suits. And Brandon's like, we got to do this. Fuck Tony Soprano. And Christopher's trying to be a good guy. Listen to Tony. Be a good boy. No, we can't do it. We got to say it. And we got to listen to the rules because that's what the mob is all about.
And then stupid Brendan and his stupid stooges fuck everything up.
Yep. They go there. They steal the truck, which is filled with Italian suits. And one of them leaves a gun on his lap while he's getting out of the truck and kills the driver. And then a lot of other shit has to take place.
Yes. I do love that even though Tony says you're giving the suits back, that even though they're going to have to give the suits back, Tony and Paulie and Silvio, they're shopping off that rack.
Well, Silvio had to say the line, maybe these ones don't got to go back. Meaning,
Maybe
who's going to know?
Hey, Tone, maybe these don't have to go back.
And Tony agrees. Like, I don't see you putting that rack and that rack and that rack back in the truck. In other words, leave these ones here. These are our size. Take the ones that we don't need. So, and then return the truck.
And then, of course, to put the bow on this episode, while Tony is packing up Livia's home, he has another anxiety attack. He doesn't actually pass out this time, but it's kind of overwhelming for him, which I understand because we get back to my grandmother. She's about to turn 98 years old. My grandmother,
God bless her,
and she's currently living in the nursing home. And I know it's not my mother, but it's my grandmother. It is very traumatic. It was very traumatic to have a home that my grandmother's house has felt like home to me more than any home I've ever lived in my whole life. So when we were packing everything up from her house, 44 years of memories.
Start to get sentimental, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And, you can see where Tony would be having an anxiety attack there.
Yep. Well, also because he felt like maybe he was letting his dad down by putting her in the home. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And doing something that wasn't really being done in the mob or in the world at that time, putting someone, in a home like that. And he just felt like maybe he was doing something unsunlike. And I get it. That's a cause for a panic attack.
Yes.
More so than looking at a box of Uncle Ben's rice. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But yeah, he gets all sentimental. He almost has the panic attack. Then he goes back to Dr. Milfy again, and he's angry now. And it seems like that was the way they always ended an episode when he was with Dr. Milfy, was his tirade. He had to take it out on somebody. So that makes sense,
Yep, he takes it out on her, and then he definitely, to end the episode, takes it out on Georgie.
Oh, yes. Which, the best line that he delivered in the whole episode was during the first part of the phone not being able to be used by Georgie, when he looks at him and goes, You know, you and my mother got a lot in common. She don't know how to use the phone either, but she's 78. What's your excuse?
Yeah, what's your fucking excuse?
And yeah, Georgie again is having a problem with the phone, but he's also doing it while talking out loud. And for anybody who's ever worked in an office space, when you see somebody who's doing something dumb, but they're also like ho hum about it, like, oh, I know I'm fucking this up, but someone else will fix it, and I don't really care. You get pissed off, and Tony went wild.
Yes, he did. He cracked the fuck out of that guy with that phone receiver.
And this is an ongoing thing in this series. Georgie takes a beating.
Yes.
And if you've watched the show, you know what Georgie looks like. But if you don't, Georgie was like 6'5", 300 pounds, and looked like a biker without a beard. He was clean shaven. So to see Tony Soprano beat the shit out of this guy, it's sort of like, damn, why didn't he ever try to fight back once?
He never fought back. Yeah.
Never once. He had enough common sense not to do anything wrong.
Kind of a dope.
Yep. Yep.
Well, overall, I would say this episode of The Sopranos, because again, the pilot's the pilot. For a first real episode of the show, I would say this is definitely at least a 4.5 out of 5.
I agree. It was almost absolutely perfect. I think the only thing that would have been a little bit better would have been to see more of that power struggle with Uncle June in this second episode. But coming up, it starts to pour out. So there is understanding why they would be reserved not to do it right away.
Yes.
You know what I mean? They were leading up to it, and that's, you know, but definitely a 4 out of 5 because it had everything, like you mentioned, drama, the mob stuff, the family stuff, drama and comedy all mixed into one perfectly, that you wanted more from it. When it went to end, you were like, damn, I would like to like 10 more minutes just to see what was about to happen.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. Well, that being said, we'll wrap up this episode of the SopranoCast, and we will see you next week as we go through the next episode of The Sopranos, Season 1, Episode 3, Denial, Anger, Acceptance.
Yes.
Archie, thank you for joining me.
And thank you for having me, my friend.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Next week on the show, because I really do like the idea of us switching it. Next week on the show, Archie's the boss.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll see you next week, everybody.